Fresh Delight writes, I have a few problems with scrapbooking using big embellishments. If I buy an ephemera pack, the biggest die cuts always disappear from sight. No matter their shape, they stay unused in the drawer. Glittergale, can you help Fresh Delight enjoy enormous embellishments?
Of course I can. Today I've pulled out plenty of embellishments and papers, so I'll just take you through them as I go, but I wanted you to have a quick look. Different stamps, I have stickers, some dimensional stickers, these are made with cork, lots of die cuts, different types of 3D elements, some chipboard, and lots of paper. I'm going to be working with 2 3x5 photos today, and that's the first step in this little process, is that if you want to use large embellishments, then you need to have a design that's going to make room for those different items. So if you want to use multiple photos, then you may want to consider printing them at a smaller size than your normal 4x6 or larger print. So I'm going to use 2 photos, and I could make this work with large embellishments with 2 4x6 prints, but I happen to have these at a smaller size anyway, so it was a good way to go ahead and use them and show you this particular balance. But if you wanted to use 3 or more photos, I would definitely start to look at bringing the image size down from 4x6 if you're going to want to include lots of embellishment or lots of large embellishment without covering it up. So I'm going to be doing the background with this stripe, and I want a 1-inch frame of the stripe all the way around, and then a larger block of the pink in the middle, so that I get this rainbow effect around the edge that reminds me a little bit of an airmail envelope. Start by having a quick look at balance from the outside frame. When I said I was going to add the stripe around the edge and then have the smaller square in the middle, I said I wanted about 1 inch of the diagonal frame around the edge. Well, this is 1 inch all the way around the edge. This is a 10 by 10 square in the middle. And to me, this is too much of a frame to get that effect that I liked about with the effect of the little diagonal lines at the edge of an airmail envelope, because they don't come in this far. If that were the shape of your envelope, the size of your envelope, it would be closer to the edge. So I've cut this box too small. And so to try to improve the balance, I've cut a larger box that's just shy of 11 inches square. And now I have just a little bit less than, or a little bit more than a 1/2 inch around the edge, and I'm getting a better balance than with just the pink box on its own. From this box design, I tend to use a shape that will go all the way across the 12 by 12, and normally something around 4 inches wide. In this case, I just followed the pattern so that I would be able to get the most from the pattern paper. So I have the 3 smaller doilies in the print on one piece, and then the larger doily on another piece. That would be great for extending this into a coordinating double page or to use elsewhere in my album. So the 4-inch by 12-inch strip works really well because it's 1/3 of the 12 by 12 space, so it helps to keep things balanced, and that balanced structure in the background will always help you if you're adding more and more embellishment or larger embellishments, because everything is going to be quite balanced from the beginning, and so you have a little bit more flexibility in where you can place things without the layout feeling heavier to one side or anything like that. Now, with my placement, I'm looking for this central line of the page, so I've placed that roughly halfway across the layout, and I wanted to have space over here because I'm going to add a little bit of detail to this side. That's going to add some visual weight to this side of the page, so then when I add embellishments on this side, it will be balanced. So I have 2 strips that I've cut from the Uncharted Waters pattern paper. I have one that I'm going to leave with the anchors showing, and then one that has a stripe that's on the reverse. And I'm going to put these on the other side here so that I have that little bit more weight to this side of the page at this point. And then I can add the stripe over the top. And that stripe takes 2 different patterns that have a really distinct motif. So you've got doilies on one and anchors on the other, which I admit are a little bit random together. But by putting this stripe between them, has a little bit more harmony in the design because you're taking something that's quite neutral and breaking up the two different specific patterns. And then I'm ready to add my photos over the top. I've matted these in the lighter pink paper from Basic Write. It's kind of a cross between a floral and a polka dot, because it's like a very tiny daisy, so it reads more like a polka dot than a bright floral. The other side is definitely floral. And with this, I'm again looking at thirds and halves of the page. So I want to make sure I have some of the pink left at the bottom. I want to make sure I have plenty of room over here. And I'm looking, if I were to divide this page into 3 segments, then that first line of thirds would come across here. So I want the photos to cross that line. And then if I divided it this way, it would come across here. So I want to take that magic point where 2 of those lines cross and make sure that my photo is on top of that. That's going to help things be really balanced and give me lots of room for my embellishment. Okay, so from here, I'm ready to start embellishing, and I have all of this space here to add large items, including my title and my journaling, but I think I could add lots of embellishment down here with perhaps the title letters, and then have space here to write. That's why I've chosen a really simple pattern here rather than a busy pattern, because that way I can write on this space without it making it illegible. And then I can also add smaller embellishments up here that will coordinate with this, so that you'll be able to have that diagonal framing, which also creates this kind of L shape, because I now have this vertical line, and the photos being landscape helps me start to draw a horizontal line, so I can continue that with my embellishment, and then everything should work out, and I shouldn't need to shy away from the larger embellishments in the pack. Okay, from here on out, as I add the embellishment, I'm going to be using lots of bits and pieces from different collections, but you can always find all the supplies linked at the bottom of the page if you click the link from YouTube over to 2 Peas in a Bucket. So I'm going to start with 2 tags. And this small one is from the Pink Paisley Portfolio Collection, and then the larger one with the journaling prompts is by Ellie Studio. And I've only filled in the top bit because the last 2 didn't really help with the story I wanted to tell, so I'm just going to assume that I can cover that up with more embellishment. But I've gone ahead and filled in the ones that did make sense with the story I wanted to tell on this layout, so that I make sure I don't accidentally cover up the space that I want to use for my writing. Now, this page design has naturally given me this space to follow. So your eye starts up here and comes across. So this is where I can place all the embellishment. One of the best ways to incorporate larger embellishments is to start looking at the corners and ways you can frame the photos or other elements on your page. So I'm starting here at this corner and going to build an extension here. So this goes around, well, so that it forms a corner here going around that corner, so that I have this little L shape. And I'm just trying to figure out if I want the little bit of turquoise to show in between, or if I prefer if it looks like the tags. I think I like it like this, because then I have just the turquoise is just popping over that pink edge there. And now the second big tip, other than using the framing, that's first tip. The second tip for using big embellishments is to make sure that you're mixing them with smaller embellishments. I find that if you just use a large piece and you don't include smaller pieces to balance it off, then the large pieces seem overwhelming and they really capture your eye and maybe take your attention away from the photos. If you add some smaller details in with the larger pieces, it's a little bit more easy on the eye, even though you've put more stuff on the page. I know that's not the most sensible of phrases, but I hope that by the end here it will make a little bit of sense. So I'm going to start with putting a stamp here, and this is from Evalicious, and it just says Photo Love with a little arrow pointing toward the pictures. So this is a smaller detail. I'm just going to add that here. Nice and simple. And then I'm going to continue to add smaller pieces both in and around here, but I also am going to add some larger embellishments. So I decided for the title, instead of using letter stickers, I would use two different die cut words and put them together. So this sunshine piece is from the American Crafts Mayberry collection, and that's chipboard. And the hello card is paper and die cut like that from a die cut pack. And so because this is cut out, I think it's more legible if it's lifted off the page because you get that shadow effect underneath. So I've added pop dots here and then continued the pop dots here so that it will stay, the whole piece will stay up off the page rather than flattening out that second half of the word. And this can then go above those two tags so that I'm not adding any empty space in between. I'm building this all as one cohesive piece where everything fits together. I want to pay attention to this H as I'm putting it down because I don't want that mix in the background. I want a solid color there. So I can move that until I get everything in a spot where I like it, and then pop that into place. Other large embellishments, one trick I use to move them around until I'm happy is to take them off the full sheet and just cut a little bit of the plastic away so that you can have them off the sheet, but you can still move them around until you're happy. So this is a pinwheel from the Amy Tangerine collection, the new, I believe it's from the new one, yeah. And so it has all these different pieces from Yes Please, and I think this is going to go about here, but because I have left the plastic on, I can get everything here kind of arranged before I go ahead and stick that to the page. Other things I wanted to include here, I like the idea of having one arrow toward the photo and then one arrow toward the journaling here so that I have the arrows connecting the two going back and forth. And this is also from that same pink paisley die cut pack. This one is a small detail. I'm just going to add it flat to the page and tuck it in this little gap here, and hopefully I can get it so that I don't cover up the wording below. And that makes me think that I may want to bring this pinwheel up a little bit because I don't want too much space in between since I've got these spaced quite tight together. And then I wanted to add something down here to cover up this bottom bit. Well, that pink paisley die cut set again has a nice little turquoise piece like this, and on pop dots that can cover that up and balance the dimension from the title. So I have something popped up here, I have something popped down here. I'm just going to place this by the words that I wanted to cover. That starts to give me a little bit better idea of where that framing might go. I also start to look at different shapes that are repeating. So I have a circle element here, I have a circle element here. So I've cut out some of the cork circle pieces, and this one that says right now goes with the idea of this currently journaling card. So I could add another circular element here perhaps, and then I have 3 of the circles all in one little space. So I'm thinking that if I put these so that they overlap, then that solves my spacing problem up here, and it will bring in all those shapes. So I think I'm ready to go ahead and start sticking those into place. There we go. And from there, that leaves me some little pockets that I can add smaller details. So I have this smaller space here, I have this little pocket of space here, and I still have room for more journaling up here if I want to add some more. So I can then look for smaller details to fit in those spots. I was trying out the different stamps that I'd pulled out to see what fits well, and I think even though I already have several motifs going on here, I have not just the floral and the stripes, but I have the doilies and the anchors, and now I've added arrows in. I think I'm just going to keep on adding things, and I am going to add in a little camera that might go within this little grouping here somewhere. And I just quickly wanted to show you the technique I've been using to color these cameras. It's really, really simple, but just something that adds a little bit of something extra to this design. So just take a little break from the layout quickly to show you my process with that. So this camera stamp comes in a set with 2 cameras and 2 text pieces. They're designed by Alison Craft for Webster's Pages. So there's 4 stamps in this set, and they're red rubber, so they stamp really cleanly, but they have the cushion already adhered and it just sticks to your block, no problem. So you don't need the space of a wood block, but you get the quality of the red rubber like you would on a wood-mounted stamp. Now, I'm just using scraps of pattern paper where it has quite a simple pattern to it, instead of stamping on solid cardstock. So this is a music print that's just a scrap from a glitz paper design, and use ink that will dry quickly and doesn't bleed. So I'm using my Jenny Bolin ink, but there are lots of different inks that you can use for this technique. And if you're using pencils, really, you can use any ink you want because you don't have to worry about it bleeding with the pencil. If you're going to use markers, it's a little bit more important to test your ink and find one that won't bleed with your markers. So I have the brown the design stamped in brown on that scrap of pattern paper, and I'm just going to do some really simple coloring with 2 shades of one color. You can choose any color you want, but you need either 2 colored pencils or 2 markers that are the same color, different shades, and start with the lighter one. Now I'm going to be using Copic markers, and this technique does work easiest with Copics and other markers like this that are alcohol based because they're made to blend with each other. But you can get a similar effect with different markers and different colored pencils. Just take the idea of this and work on it as a trial with whatever supplies you have, if this is something that you haven't done before. But there's lots of information out there about detailed coloring, of beautiful ways to color all sorts of different stamps. I just want to show you a really simple way so that if you have stamps like this where you could color in just a little bit, you could add that bit of dimension. It doesn't take a lot of time or a lot of stress, just something really, really simple that will make it just a little bit different than stamping it plain. Okay, so I'm taking the lighter color and I'm coloring in the spots of the stamp that I want to add color to. So I'm using this band at the bottom and the top, and then the central part of the lens. So color in all that space with the lighter color first, then go to the darker shade, and go to the outside edges and add in just a little bit of color from that outside corner in toward the center. Same thing in each of these boxes. And don't worry that it looks a little bit too blunt as soon as you start, because the third step is to lighten it up. So I'm not going to add anything else to the central piece. You can, of course, do a little bit more experimenting. Then go back to your lighter color. Go back and blend this out just by going over the top. Now this is why the alcohol markers work really well for this, because you'll find with some markers, the water-based markers, that you'll end up with too much water in the paper, and the paper will start to disintegrate, and that's what makes the alcohol markers quite useful. But you can do the same with colored pencils by just blending the colors. And then it takes a second to dry, and I have overcolored while I'm sitting here talking, and it's bled a little bit over the edges. But you'll find that with a little bit of practice, some really, really simple coloring like that will only take you a few seconds and just gives you a little different look. So I'm going to use this one where I didn't quite overdo it so much because the edges are a little bit cleaner, but that's the idea. It was just using 2 colors, and for those of you who have Copics and were really curious about which ones I just used, that was RV 11 and 14, but seriously don't freak out too much about specific colors. Just use one color and 2 shades and give it a try. Something really, really simple. And those of you who are already experts in coloring, you run away and do amazing things. But I just wanted to show you that really quick and simple way to color a basic design like this. Now I can take my little camera that I've cut out and just add it into this little grouping. And again, I'm looking at covering this little gap, not letting any of that gap show through, but instead framing the different angles that are there. So I'm actually following the angle of the W with the angle of the edge of the camera. I also then want to add some really small, delicate details. And part of this story about the Hello Sunshine is that the vast majority of the photos and stories I have to tell about this particular event are all about the rain. These are some photos of us rehearsing outside, and we rehearsed for weeks, and every time we would get there, it would start raining. And this was the only time it was sunny, and it was sunny for about 30 minutes, and then we had an absolute downpour. So even though these pictures are sunny, I want to add these little rain cloud details in. So I'm going to do that with some wood veneer and some rub-on. So the wood veneer pieces are from Freckled Fawn in a sort of springtime rainy day set. There's umbrellas and clouds and lightning and all sorts of little things like that. And then the rub-ons are from Dear Lizzie, and they have all these different pieces. There's 2 sheets. And so I've just cut out the various pieces I'm going to use on this page, and I still have plenty left over for later. So somewhere I have my lolly stick to add the rub-ons, and then I'm going to put the wood veneer cloud over the top. And I like how that will then connect all the different elements there. So I have lots of paper elements going on. But when I add the rub-ons, it's quite easy sometimes for rub-ons to seem a little disconnected because they're flat, but they're not. It's obvious that they're not printed onto the page, and they have that different texture and just look a little different than the other elements. But if you take something else and add it in, you can start to really make them feel like they're part of the embellishment without being so different. If you really want to work more with rub-ons, I'd also suggest you take a look at Vilna's In the Mood to Scrap videos, because she has several where she shows you all sorts of beautiful things to do with rub-ons, and she has that same sort of idea of adding different elements to make them work. She quite often mixes them with paint and other things like that, or she'll layer them up so much that that they definitely belong, because there's not just this tiny little isolated area of the rub-ons. So now I have rain clouds here. It would be nice to start to bring some of the motifs from this part of the page over to a smaller section of embellishment up here. So I have another set of little rainy clouds. But the reason I kept this one for this side is that it's a corner piece. The raindrops are just on this one side, so I can wrap it around the photo. And just like this creates the corner here by extending out, this way I'm also working around the corner, and I can have this connect everything in the embellishment toward the photos. My next step is to start looking for places that need some sort of other element, different shapes than what I brought in. And at this point, I'm looking for things that are smaller and quite simple. I'm not actually done adding larger embellishments just yet, but I need to add some smaller pieces to create the places that will let the large embellishments work. So one thing I like to do is then go to different sorts of little word and phrase stickers. And I've picked out 3 that will fit well with both the theme and the colors of the layout. This is from Vintage Bliss by Simple Stories, and there's all sorts of different words and phrases there. And I can come in and look for things like where I have so many vertical elements here, it would be nice to have some horizontal pieces. So I could take 2 of these and create a different element here so that I'm alternating the different elements that I'm including. So I have lots of vertical pieces I have lots, well, I not have lots, but a few circles. So I have lots of rectangles, a few circles, and now to have some horizontal rectangles as well. Because I've added 2 up here, it would be nice to balance one at the bottom. So I have this one, and I have this natural space over here, but it's not big enough for this particular phrase. So I can just cut it down into 2 pieces, and that will create a good balance with the space that's available and mimic the fact that there's 2 of them up here. So now I've extended that space. This gives me a spot then where I can start to look for places that might need a larger bit of embellishment. And now that I've extended this line, I'm looking at this space here and wishing this had something larger. I'm also wishing that I could bring in some yellow. So I had a look at other elements that would coordinate with this bit of yellow here and the fact that this is a circle. And in that same die cut pack as the sunshine, there's this yellow doily piece that's quite big. So that works well to add this down here in the bottom edge. It's going to connect this empty space to the doily print pattern paper, so that works in several ways to get everything to work well together. So when I'm adding larger embellishments later in the page design, I'm looking for places where I can add them in a way that will create some balance and not overwhelm the photos by looking at those same spaces. And then I can look toward other elements. I know that I have this empty space here. I know that I have space here. So this isn't going to work for a large embellishment, but this could. And I have this sticker sheet. This is from October Afternoon. And I liked this pink butterfly here that will fit well in this space here. So I'm going to do this one with pop dots because there's quite a few flat elements there. But now I'm adding in another motif yet again, so now I have butterflies in the mix. How can I make that butterfly connect with everything else? Well, I can go back to this little space here. The trick then was to find something small enough, because these other butterflies here, they're a very different style if you look at the black and white type of butterfly versus the polka dot. And this pink one is really big. It's even bigger than this one. But there are smaller elements. So I have this tiny little blue butterfly, and that will fit right in this spot here. So I just keep looking for different elements in my stash until the pieces fit together. If there hadn't been a butterfly on this particular sheet, I would have just gone to other elements. Maybe I needed to punch one from pattern paper, maybe I needed to cut one by hand, maybe I needed to stamp one, but there would be a way to bring this motif to that motif and make it all work. I've added that little bit of extra journaling, and I'm down to just the smallest little finishing touches. Added the date and location with the sticker from the same sheet as the butterflies, the October Afternoon sheet, and just added one more of those tiny little wood veneer hearts there as well. Now, looking at the page, I'm just in this last process looking for anything that seems like it could connect a little bit better. So when I'm looking at this space, then comparing to this smaller bit of embellishment up here, I'm noticing that I did a better job of incorporating the yellow and in the circular shapes. So I have all these yellow circular elements down in this part of the page, but I haven't repeated that up here at all. So I had a look at all the different supplies that I brought in and was able to find one really simple piece that I could just add into this grouping. It's a yellow sticker from Studio Calico. It's on this sheet. They've done similar designs in a few different colors with different words on the stickers, but they're not perfect circles, they're all more like pebble shapes. So I'm going to add this with a pop dot just up here to bring in that round yellow shape that I had incorporated down there. And then one last little thing, I thought I would look to see if I wanted to use any enamel dots as a finishing touch or not. And I pulled out this sheet first, and it has 3 that are yellow, 2 large and 1 small. So having a look, one of the first places that I tend to look with enamel dots is if I have any shapes that would look nice with one in the center, and I do tend to like how they look on butterflies. So I can put one of the large enamel dots in the center of this butterfly, and then balance that with the small enamel dot in the middle of the small butterfly. And that gives me one left to use at the bottom of the page, where I can add it straight in to this little gap made underneath the place and then the stamping of that. So I then have one little yellow dot there. Now that might be one step too far. It might be 6 steps too far for the style of your embellishment. So that's why I show you things step by step so that you can see what it looks like all the way along the line. And when there's a spot where you thought, oh, it looks finished now, I wouldn't add anything else, then that's the space where you should stop and don't continue to add more. But some of you will still be looking at this design now and seeing little spaces where you might want to add more elements, and that's absolutely fine too. There's definitely a different level of embellishment that makes each of us happy, so find that spot and embrace it. Your challenge, if you haven't guessed already, is to use a larger embellishment, and that can be anything. You might find that you use your larger embellishments as your title. You might tuck them underneath the corners. You might include things like pinwheels or big butterflies. You might have all sorts of different elements, and you can show us how you use them on a page. When you upload to the gallery, in your layout description, please tell us your tips for using large embellishments and how it worked on the layout that you tried. I look forward to seeing what you make, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at twopeasinabucket.com.